today we have an amazing talk to talk about something that we call the low-code Lakehouse. So as an introduction, my name is Sanjeev Mohan. I am a recovering Gartner analyst, if you may. I used to work for Gartner, and I left to start my own advisory, and it's called SanjMo. No points for guessing where the name comes from. So, and joining me today is Mitesh.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mitesh. Thank you, Sanjeev. I am VP of Product Marketing for Prophecy, which we'll talk more about in just a few minutes. And Sanjeev and I, it's my privilege actually to be here on stage with you once again.
Thank you.
Were just at Gartner
Yes.
in Orlando just a few short months ago.
Yeah.
And you know what? You don't know that I'm going to do this, but I'm going to just embarrass you for a second.
Okay.
I've known Sanjeev for about 3 to 4 years. You know, if you've come to this session, you probably come for Sanjeev and you know exactly who he is, but there are two attributes, two qualities about you that really stand out to me.
Okay.
One is that you are incredibly genuine.
Thank you.
You genuinely want to help practitioners, decision makers navigate the ever-evolving technology landscape, so I really appreciate that about you. And the second is that you are endlessly curious. You often have the answer, you know you have the answer, but you will always listen like you're wrong, and really appreciate that about you as well.
Thank you.
So those two qualities in this industry are just pretty rare. That sincerity and that curiosity is incredible. And I say all this as context because Sanjeev is going to walk us through a few trends here today, and I hope you'll all pay close attention.
Yeah, thank you so much. I did not pay him, you know, just so you know. I really appreciate those kind words. Okay, let's get started. So, the agenda for today, we have only 20 minutes, so we are going to talk about when I go talk to customers, and I talk to all of you, I find out what are your biggest problems, what's holding you back, and also, what are the key trends that I see people talk about. And after that, I'm going to hand it over to Mitesh, because Mitesh is going to give you an overview of what is Prophecy. You know Prophecy is one of the 5 platinum sponsors, and how to get started. So that is the agenda. Let's get started. So what are some of the biggest problems I see? The biggest theme, if somebody asks you when you go back, what was the biggest thing that you learned in this conference? The answer is unification. Unification of data, unification of AI, unification of cloud, in order to democratize the data, make it easy for people to find the insights from the data. So that's one, but none of that can happen if we don't have high quality data always available, right? So the last thing is, in order to solve this, this problem we have, we've come up with this so-called modern data stack. But the problem with modern data stack is that it is growing out of control. Now you've got a bunch of these different products, micro-segmentation of categories, and they don't always talk to each other. Every product has a catalog, a metadata, they don't talk to each other, they don't have open standards. So what does that cause? So all of this leads to complexity, costs are unsustainable and unpredictable, and also developer productivity. How many of you in this crowd are developers or engineers? Okay, so about half of you are engineers or developers. The good news is we rule. We are running the world right now, correct? Business productivity is equal to developer productivity. If the developer productivity is low, then you know the businesses are not competitive. So what are the key trends that we see? So I want to talk to you about 3 key trends. Actually, there are 4. I'll come to a 4th. So the 3 key trends are what I call data products. So, and I'll explain to you what data products means, because it can be a bit of a confusing term. The second thing that trend I see is using some sort of a low friction way to build these data products. And then the third one is making sure they're open standards. So those are the 3 original trends I had. But the bonus trend is AI. You cannot have a conference today and not mention AI. You'd be a dinosaur, which I already am. but then I'll be a bigger dinosaur, so I didn't want to be, so we added LLMs to that. So the way we are going to do today's session is that I'm going to talk about the 3 trends, and then Mitesh is going to take over, and he's going to talk about how Prophecy is addressing those 3 trends, and then I'll come back and talk to you about my findings on LLMs. All right, so let's talk about data products. By the way, how many of you have heard about data products? Show of hands. All right, so about 10 of you. So a data product, what is a data product? A data product is, technically, it's nothing different. It could be a materialized view, it could be a report, it could be a dashboard, it could be a machine learning model, it could be a notebook. But the difference is that it's not just data. It is data with all the domain, the calculation, the semantic layer with API access. The biggest difference is that today when we do a project, so I'm a database guy, I do data warehouses. When I do a project, I build my data warehouse, my team is disbanded, we move on. What happens to that data warehouse? It just sits there. So we have to change our mindset. And the mindset change is we have to think like a product. If we think like a product, then my data warehouse has a life cycle. If I have a table, and that table I'm not using anymore, it needs to be retired. If I have a machine learning model, if I leave it around and it was trained 18 months ago, it's a big risk. So having that product management discipline, having a sense of accountability, so every data product has an owner. So today what happens is if you create a dashboard and a CFO finds that there are mistakes on that dashboard, who does the CFO talk to? There is no single point of contact. You ask a data engineer says, well, it's not my fault. I got this data from SAP like that. Go talk to the SAP guy, and so on and on. So a data product must have an owner, must have product management discipline, must have a life cycle from design all the way to retirement. And this is, by the way, how many of you have heard of data mesh? Okay, so data mesh is what made data products popular, but you don't need a data mesh. So if you are confused, like, oh, do I need to do data mesh? No, not at all. They are totally independent of each other, but data mesh is how data products became popular. The idea is that data engineering team is getting squeezed. You don't want data engineering team to be the bottleneck. The business wants answers. Data engineering team says, sorry, talk to the hand, I am busy, come back to me in 6 weeks. That doesn't work because the business is running a campaign. So domain-driven data products is the first trend. What is the second trend? So the second trend is, now we know why to modernize, why we need to use data products. But to do the data products, we need some discipline. That discipline is called data ops. What is data ops? It is all the best practices of DevOps applied to data. So like software development's been doing agile software development, CI/CD, version control, orchestration, automation, continuous testing, all of this is data ops. But how do you do all of that? That is through a low-code platform. So we'll be talking about this in a second. Let's go to trend number 3. Trend number 3 is open source. This is actually the ideal place for me to talk about open source because Databricks is all about open source. Why do I need open source? I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Are LLMs going to take our jobs away? I don't know. Nobody knows. So I don't want vendor lock-in, and I want transparency on my cost. I want to tap into this vibrant community of all of you and everybody here, who are developing. In a proprietary world, I'm locked in, And finally, I now have the freedom to pick what is coming next. So these are my 3 trends. The 4th one is on large language models, but I'm going to hold back for a second because I'm going to hand it over to Mitesh.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Sanjeev. Great setup. Thank you. So let's just rewind here and recap 3 very important trends that Sanjeev just covered: data products, open standards, low code. Let's walk through each of them, but before I do that, I'm going to talk about what prophecy is in the first place, right? So prophecy is low code for the data lakehouse, low code for data transformations, empowering everyone in the business from non-technical business users to the more technical data engineers to build and orchestrate data pipelines, taking raw data and turning them into data products that are fit for AI, ML, and analytics. So that's a quick summary, and I just kind of touched on some of the trends Sanjeev just spoke about, but let's walk through some of these in a little bit more detail now. So starting with data products. I think we all are aware that raw data from the various sources, CRM systems, ERP systems, and the like, pretty much not fit for use from the get-go. You have to transform that data, you have to clean it, you have to filter it, you have to aggregate it, taking it from that bronze to silver to gold status, ultimately creating those data products that are in fact fit for AI, ML, and analytics in your organization. And that's precisely what prophecy does. Right, the transformations that take the raw data and ultimately build the pipelines to create those data products. How do we do it? We do it in two ways. Right? One is this low-code approach, covering the second very important trend. And so the challenge here is, of course, as many of you are well aware as data engineers, you're being inundated with requests from all across the organization. Business users, non-technical users want their data, they want data for analytics, and they're changing their requirements, and there's just simply not enough time in the day, and so does that resonate with anybody, by the way? Yeah, a few of you? And so what do? You empower the business to serve themselves, and the low-code approach is one very important way to do that. And so what we have is a visual UI that will allow these non-technical folks to drag and drop and ultimately create and issue Excel-like functions to build their own data pipelines and build their own data products. I know you're probably thinking, well, drag and drop is great, but English is the next coding language here for the large language world. Yeah. We're going to cover that in just a minute. So, low code is point number one. There's way number one. Way number two is now getting to the open standard. So, that visual interface with prophecy is actually converted into open standard code. Right? And this is unique to prophecy, where we take that visual interface and convert it to code that is your code, that is Git committable code, and you can do with it what you wish. And so this is, as opposed to other vendors that might take that visual interface, that low-code approach, and then lock you into their system with more proprietary code. So again, open standard code with prophecy. And so with that, I think we have a fourth trend to cover.
So Mitesh, one thing that I really like about the way what prophecy is doing, this is just my own opinion, is that I mentioned how the data engineering team is getting squeezed and is a bottleneck, but they are the ones who are the experts. They know how to engineer code. Business people are the domain experts. They know the business needs. So one thing that I like is that using the no code, the business team can drag and drop and they can build out their logic, and then the code that's generated, the data engineer or the data scientist can come and enhance it, and then it gets reflected on the UI.
Such an incredible point. Absolutely accurate, and you can kind of see in the image here on the right-hand side, it's an effective way to collaborate between the business users and the more technical data engineers. So absolutely right. Yeah,
I love that collaboration aspect, because now you got two different types of persona, but they're using the same platform. It's no longer like, I use a catalog because I'm a business guy, and the data engineer uses a notebook, and the two will never meet. So, okay. Let's move on. We have 5 minutes left, so we're doing great on what is happening with large language models. So the first thing that I want to point out is the LLMs that we started looking at, like ChatGPT or GPT-3, GPT-4, the problem with this language model is that it's trained on public data. Businesses don't really care about public data. They want their own data. So that's one of the problems. And a lot of that training is on unstructured data, because it's a language model. It can go read an unstructured, like it can read the internet, and it can then start predicting what's the next word and how to summarize it and all that. But most of my business data is in structured format, ERP, CRM, my data warehouses, and so on. Then the next thing is that what's becoming really big is a whole idea of copilots, but organizations really want to be Gen AI first. So what is Gen AI? Good. So this is what companies are telling me. They want the data to be trained on the corporate data. That's the first thing. How do you train it on corporate data? We'll see in the next slide. The second thing, and that data, by the way, could be on-prem, it could be in a single cloud, it could be in multiple clouds, it could be in various different formats. It could be in Parquet files, it could be in a relational database, it could be in MongoDB, it's all over the place. So that, to be Gen AI first, you need access to all your data that is current, and there's data quality, as we talked about. The second thing is business productivity, making sure, in fact, one of the things that, my biggest revelation, there are a lot of things I loved at this conference. This whole unified format, how many of you saw that? Iceberg, Hoodie, Delta, but the thing that came to me as my biggest shock was English SDK for Apache Spark. I did not see that coming, because that natural language is the best way for anybody in the company to ask questions. That is number 2 for Gen AI. And the last thing is security. Today, there's a lot of concern that when I ask a question to my LLM, all that data is going to OpenAI, and then I don't know what's going to happen to that. We've had some, Samsung is a very common example that companies are banned. So what do you do? So now you need a strategy for large language models. Let's start from the bottom up. So engineers like to go bottom up, business people top down. So I'm going to go bottom up. So the last one is prompting. Everybody is prompting LLM. What does a prompt mean? I have to ask the right question. That's why prompt engineer is such a big role these days. So a prompt engineer's job is to ask the right question to influence the model so it can give you the right answer. This is the only or the most commonly available way to use an LLM. If you go to the second one, which is tune an LLM, very difficult task. Now you need to understand how was that LLM trained and change the weights. If you don't get it right, then you can make that LLM underperform. This is what Databricks is trying to solve with Dolly. In Dolly, they're letting you tune. So that is number 2. If you go to the top one, the holy grail is train your custom model. I have 20, 30, 40 years of my corporate data. How do I take an open source, maybe a model, I point it to my corpus of data, and as I train it, learn what's in my 30 years of data, so I can then start asking questions. This is the reason why Databricks bought Mosaic ML. That is the goal. Can we do it today? Absolutely not. GPUs are hard to find, super expensive, but the idea is at some point, this will go down in price, and we'll be able to train our own model. So in the next couple of years, this may be a very different space, but we cannot tell at this point. So with this, Mitesh?
Okay, perfect. I'll close it out here. So 3 options, right? Creating your own model, tuning your own model, and using a prompt. Our core belief, as my shirt would indicate, is a prompt is all you need, and so I'm going to explain why in just a second. But look, these pros and cons are probably going to shift over time as technology evolves, as costs evolve, et cetera. But what is undebatable today is that the cheapest, easiest, most convenient, and simplest way to get started today with building generative AI applications on your enterprise data is through the prompt itself. It takes a data science and an AI problem and turns it into a data engineering problem. So in our session yesterday, our 2 co-founders here, Raj, who's sitting in the back, as well as Maciek, actually demoed creating a generative AI application on enterprise data in just over 13 minutes with Prophecy. So this is sort of it walks you through the 2 steps to do it. It involves building your vector database, which is what we're calling the knowledge warehouse, which is where you embed your enterprise, your tokenize and embed your enterprise documents, and ultimately pull the right information along with the question, send it with the question, and send it to OpenAI to get the answer back. So two-step process. Prophecy makes it dead simple to create and generate your own generative AI applications on your own enterprise data. That's what we do for AI. This is what we do with AI. We also announced last week Prophecy Data Copilot. There's probably going to be a lot of talk about copilots going on into the future here with many vendors, including their own AI assistants in their own products. This is for us. And so, getting the blinking lights here, but Prophecy Data Copilot, think of it as your AI assistant for building and generating trusted data pipelines. The analogy here is GitHub Copilot is to software development, as Prophecy Data Copilot is to data engineering. With that, our time is up. Thank you so much for staying. If you would like a baby Yoda, come with me to the Prophecy booth back there, and we'll meet you over there.
Thank you so much. Bye.